Hi everyone. Hi everyone. I think this is our last ACT video. I may have said that actually with the last one, but that's because I thought I had already recorded this one. So here's problem number one. It's the absolute value of 7 minus 3 minus the absolute value of 3 minus 7. Well, we know 7 minus 3 is 4. And we know 3 minus 7 is negative 4. The absolute value of 4 is 4. The absolute value of negative 4 is 4. And so I get 0, or choice D for number 1. Number 2. Consultant charges $45 an hour. She works on a consultation plus a flat $30 consulting fee. How many hours must she work are included in a $210 bill for consultation? Well, this is rate of change times the variable plus the initial amount that we talked about before. The rate of change is $45 an hour times some number of hours plus the initial amount, $30, and that's supposed to equal their consultation fee, which in this problem is $210. If I subtract 30 from both sides, I have 45h equals 180. And when I divide both sides by 45, I get h equals 4, which is why G is the answer for number 2. 3. A vehicle averages 14 miles per gallon of gasoline. Vehicle B averages 36 miles per gallon. At these rates, how many more gallons of gasoline does A need than B to make a 1,008-mile trip? Well, I like to think about this by using the different rates, but I think most of you would say, well, if it's 1,008 miles and they get 14 miles per gallon, that's 72 gallons. And if it's 1,008 miles and they get 36 miles per gallon, that's only 28 gallons. And the difference between those is 44 gallons, and that's why C is the choice for me. Number 4. 4 says r squared minus 59t plus 54 minus 8t squared plus 60t is equivalent to what? Well, they'd like me to combine like terms. And do I see any? Why, look, I see some t's that can be combined. So I'm going to have r squared plus t plus 54 minus 8t squared. I'm sorry, that's 81. 81. Oh, I'm just starting this one over. Okay. R squared minus 59t plus 54 minus 82t squared. No, that's r squared. No, there are no, there's just t's. Oh, I think it's time for a new glasses check. All right, so we can combine these and we get negative 81t squared. And we can combine these and we get 1t, and then we have that 54. And that's why J is my answer for number 4. 4 is J. 5. Figure below is composed of a square, BCDE, and an equilateral triangle. That means all the sides are the same length. So when I look at this, I know the square has sides that are all the same length. But since this is an equilateral triangle and one of the side lengths is this long, all of them must be that side length. The length of CD, that's this one, is 6. Well, that means that they're all 6, doesn't it? What's the perimeter of ABCDE? Oh, well, ABCDE is going to be 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, or 5 times 6 for 30. And that's choice C. Number 6. The expression 4z plus 3 and z minus 2. I get 4z squared plus 3z minus 8z minus 6 when I FOIL. And if I combine like terms, 4z squared minus 5z minus 6. And that corresponds to choice J. J for number 6. 7. 40% of a number is 8. 40% of a number times x is 8. Well, I could just pull out my calculator and divide by 0.4 on both sides, but I don't have a calculator, so I'm doing 4/10 x equals 8, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 10 over 4. These cancel. I get x equals 20. And that's why, oh, and then what is 15% of that number? Okay, so I need 15% of 20. Well, that's 10% of 20 plus 5% of 20, which is 2 plus 1, or 3. And that's why C is the answer for number 7. It's good to read the problem through. 8. 6 consecutive integers that add up to 447 are x minus 2, x minus 1, x plus 1, x plus 2, x plus 3. What is the value of x? Well, we know that when we add up all of these numbers, we get 447. And if I add up all those x's, I see 6 x's. And when I add up the numbers next to those x's, negative 2 plus negative 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3, I end up with 3. And this should equal 447. I'll subtract 3 from both sides, and I'll get 444. And when I divide both sides by 6, I get 74 equals x, and that's choice H. Okay, let's take a look at 9. Nine says, in the standard xy plane, point M with coordinates 5, 4 is the midpoint, and B has the coordinates of 7, 3. That's an endpoint. What are the coordinates of A, the other endpoint? Well, we go down 2, so we'll go down another 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. We're going to go up 1 over here, so we're going to go up 1 again. 4 plus 1 is 5. So 3, 5 would be my answer, and that's choice D. D for number 9. 10. Rectangle ABCD has vertices A, 4, 5, B, 0, 2, C, 6, negative 6. If we graph them in a standard xy plane, what would be the vertex D? Well, if I sketch this, here's 0, 2, and here's 4, 5, and this one is 6, negative 6. Oops, it's got to be a little further over then, doesn't it? 6, negative 6. And so we know that these are two sides of a rectangle. Well, this must be the other point. But how do I find it? Well, let's think about what we're doing here. In order to get here, I'm going to go over 2 and up 3. That means from this point, I'm going to go over 2 and up 3. Well, if I go over 2 from 6, I'm going to be at 8. And if I go up 3 from negative 6, I'm going to be at negative 3. So 8, negative 3 seems to be my answer. Oh, except for the fact that I actually went over 4. So 6 go over 4 won't be 8, but will be 10. Again, I know that this rectangle has parallel sides, and that means these slopes are the same. The slope of this line is go up 3 and over 4. So I'm going to go up 3 and over 4 from this point. And when I do that, up 3 gives me negative 3, and over 4 gives me positive 10. And that's why E is my answer to number 10. 11. Dyson owns 2 sportswear stores, X and Y. She stocks 3 brands of t-shirts, A, B, and C. The matrices below show the number of each type of t-shirt in the store and the cost of each type of t-shirt. The value of Dyson's t-shirt inventory is computed using the costs listed. What is the total value of the inventory? Well, this is a matrix multiplication problem. If we multiply that first matrix, 100, 200, 150, 120, 50, and 100, times that second matrix, 5, 10, 15, we should end up with 7350. I recommend using the matrix multiplying abilities on the graphing calculator. If you don't have a graphing calculator, you're going to have to go the long way. 100 times 5 plus 200 times 10 plus 150 times 15. That's going to be for store X, but then we also need the inventory at store Y, which is going to be 120 times 5 plus 50 times 10 plus 100 times 15. You multiply those and add up all those little bits, and you should end up in that same place. But I would much prefer to use the matrix multiplication option on my graphing calculator. Okay, 12. 12 says you've got a triangle here. It's got some measurements in it. This one is 72. And they draw this exterior angle. This one is 57, and there's this exterior angle with an X next to it. And Z is over here, and Y is up here. Well, what we know is that this angle and this angle are a linear pair. So they add up to 180. So that means that X equals 123 degrees. And we know that these two angles here are a linear pair. They add up to 180. So Y has to be 108 degrees. And finally, I need to find this one. And I can do this one of two ways. I can say, okay, 57 and 72 is 129. And if I take 129 away from 180, I get 51. If this is 51 and these are a linear pair, I know that this is 129 degrees. So what happens when I add up all three of these? I have 108, 129, and 123, and I add them up, and I get 17, 20, carry the 2, 6, 360. That's right, because I remember learning in geometry that the sum of the exterior angles of any triangle is 360. So if we remembered that, we could do the shortcut, and if we didn't remember that, we had to go the long way. So the answer to this one, number 12, is J. 13. 13 uses the table of information. 200 registered voters taken before an election, Mayor of Springdale. All 200 indicated which of the 4 candidates they would vote for. The result was posted below. What percent of the voters chose Whitney in the poll? Well, 30 people said Whitney, and 200 people were involved in the poll. And so this is 3 over 20, or 0.15. That's 15%, and so choice A for number 13. 14. If the poll is indicative of how 10,000 registered voters will actually vote in the election, which of the following is the best estimate for the number of votes Lou will receive in the election? Okay, so 80 out of 200 was Lou's percent, and that's 8 over 20. Oh gosh, I can reduce that further to 2 over 5. And we want 2 over 5 times the 10,000 people voting. So that's 20,000 divided by 5, or 4,000. And that's choice H. H for number 13. I'm sorry, 14. H for number 14. 15. If the information in the table were converted to a pie chart, the central angle of the sector for Gomez would be how many degrees? Well, Gomez had 40 out of 200. That's 1/5. So we would want 1/5 of the number of degrees in a circle, 1/5 of 360. And that turns out to be 72 degrees, and so B is my answer for number 15. In a square ABC, D is the midpoint of CE. Which of the following is the ratio of the area of triangle ADE to triangle ABD? Okay, so we've got a square, we've got a midpoint. And we want to compare this area with this area. Okay, well, I think that this problem can be done with a lot of algebra, or if I just draw this line, I can see this triangle and this triangle are the same, this triangle and this triangle are the same, and ABD is composed of 2 of those triangles, so the ratio is 1 to 2. And that's choice G. G for number 16. I wouldn't do it algebraically, but you could, and I did the first time I did the problem. All right, number 17. 17 says, which of the following is the slope of the line parallel to y equals 2/3 x minus 4? Well, we know the slopes of parallel lines are the same. And the slope of this line, because it's in y equals mx plus b form, is 2/3, so the slope of any parallel line would be 2/3. So our answer is E. 18. Janelle cut a board 30 feet long into 2 pieces. The ratio of the 2 pieces is 2 to 3. What's the length to the nearest foot of the shorter piece? Well, so remember we did this before. We said 2x, 3x. That's a total of 5x. Oops, that's a total of 5x. And so I'm saying 30 is to 5x. If I divide both sides by 5, I get that x equals 6. So I'll go back up here to the shorter board, which is 2x's. 2 times 6, or 12. So I get H for number 18. 19. What's the smallest integer greater than the square root of 58? Well, the square root of 58 is between the square root of 49, which is 7, and 64, which is 8. Let's read the question again. What's the smallest integer greater than the square root of 58? Well, this is less than the square root of 58, so I can't use it, but this is the smallest integer greater than the square root of 58. And so my choice is C for number 19. 20. Sergio plans to paint 4 walls in his room with 1 coat of paint. The walls are rectangles, and according to his measurements, each wall is 10 by 15. Okay, so he's got 10 by 15. I guess it's probably 15 foot wide and 10 feet high. So each wall is 150 square feet. He's got 4 of these walls, so 4 times 150. Now we're at 600 square feet. He will not paint the single 3 by 5 foot rectangular window. 3 by 5 is 15 square feet, so we don't need paint for that. We can subtract 15 square feet We're also the 3.5 by 7 foot door. So 3.5 times 7 is 7 halves times 7, or 49 halves feet squared. Okay, each gallon of paint covers between 300 and 350 square feet, and only gallons are available. Well, so this number is 24.5, and this is 15, and so we're taking 39.5 square feet away from 600. So if we did 600 minus 40, because this is close to 40, and I'm just approximating right now, I get 560 square feet. Can I paint that with 1 gallon of paint if the paint gallon covers 300 to 350 square feet? No, I don't think so. I think in order to get 560, I need at least 2 of these. So I need 2 gallons, which is why G is my answer. Okay, and that's G is the answer for number 20. What about 21? What are the values of x? What values of x are solutions for x squared plus 2x equals 8? Remember, we need to subtract 8 from both sides before factoring. X squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. When we factor, we get x plus 4 and x minus 2 equals 0. So we know x equals negative 4 and positive 2. And that's choice A for number 21. (22) For a bigger than 1, 3a to the 4th, no, that doesn't say 4. Yes, it does. Over 3a to the 6th. Well, these 3's cancel. And when the bases are the same, like in this case, both a, and we divide, we can subtract those exponents. 4 minus 6 is a to the negative 2, or 1 over a squared. And that's choice K. Of course, if you don't like using the rules for exponents like I do, you could always write this out. It's a little more tedious. And then you can cancel things that they have in common. And notice we have nothing left on top except our 1 and a times a for a squared on the bottom. 23. If point N has a non-zero x coordinate and a non-zero y coordinate, and the coordinates have opposite signs, trig people, opposite signs, so we know we're either in quadrant 2, or here they have the same sign, here they have the same sign, here they have opposite signs. So we're in either 2 or 4. Then point M must be located in which of the 4 quadrants? Oh, there's our answer, 2 and 4. So choice E for number 23. 24. The fixed cost of manufacturing basketballs in a factory is $1,400 per day. The variable cost, so that's our initial amount. The variable costs are $5.25 per basketball. So $5.25 is my rate of change, plus the $1,400. This is going to be the total of my costs for making basketballs in my factory. And that corresponds with choice K. K for number 24. 25. In the figure below, the triangles are similar. Remember, when you see the similarity symbol, you know that the angles are congruent and the sides are proportional. So here, they don't ask me about angles, they only ask me about sides. They have this little triangle, and they say 3A, B, C, and then they say M, KL. Well, we know that ABC is similar to KLM, which means that this side is proportional to this, and this side is proportional to this. So if this is 7.5, and this is 12.5, and this is 15, I can find these missing sides by using proportions. So, for example, 3 is to 7.5, this side is to this side, as AB is to 12.5. And I could set up another proportion using 3 is to 7.5, this is to this, as BC is to 15. So I need to solve each of these equations. I'm going to multiply both sides by 12.5. And here I'm going to multiply both sides by 15. And I'm going to get some values. I'm going to get 5 here and 6 here. And so the perimeter is what I get when I add up all the sides. I end up with 14 as my perimeter. And that's choice B for number 25. 26. 26 says 3 square root of 7 over A square root of 7 equals 3 square root of 7 over 7. Well, notice how the top is equal to the top, which means the bottom should be equal to the bottom. A root 7 equals 7. What am I multiplying root 7 by to turn it into 7? Well, if you don't know the answer, you can certainly divide both sides by root 7. I get A equals 7 over root 7, but I don't see my answer here. So let's rationalize with root 7, and then we get 7 root 7 over 7. The 7's cancel, and root 7 is my answer, which is why G is the answer. G is the answer to 26. And 27. Let's take a look at 27. 27, a hot air balloon 70 meters above the ground is falling at a constant rate of 6 meters per second, while another hot air balloon 10 meters above the ground is rising at a constant 15 meters per second. To the nearest tenth of a second, after how many seconds will the two balloons be at the same height? Well, this is asking us to solve a system of linear equations. Look, this is our initial amount for this hot air balloon, and this is its rate of change. And since it's falling, my rate of change is negative. Negative 6t plus 70. The other balloon, however, starts at 10, that's its initial height, and rises at a constant rate of 15. So this is the equation that I need to solve. I'll add 6t to both sides. I'll subtract 10 from both sides. I'll get 60 equals 21t, and when I pull out my calculator to do 60 divided by 21, I get t is approximately 2.9. That's why C is my answer for 27. '28. A hiking group will go from a certain town to a certain village by van using one of 4 roads. From the village to the waterfall, riding bicycles on 1 or 2 paths, and then the waterfall to their campsite by hiking one of 6 trails. Well, this is a counting principle problem, where we simply have to multiply the number of choices, the number of options at each choice, together. So we had 4 different roads to ride in the van on, and 2 different bike trails to choose from, and 6 trails to hike on. That gives me 48 total possible routes, and that's choice J for number 28. 29. Cube A has a side length of 2. Okay, side length of 2. And cube B has a side length that's double that. Well, so that side length must be 4. What is the volume of cube B? Okay, well, we know that the volume of a cube is length times width times height. And since those are all the same in a cube, we could just say side cubed. So 4 is the side length, cubed is 64, which is why E is my answer to 29. 30. A formula used to compute the current value in a savings account, A equals P1 plus R to the N, where N is the amount deposited, R is the rate of interest for one compounding period. Express the number as a decimal. Which of the following is closest to the value after 5 years of $10,000 at 4%? Okay, so let's plug in 10,000, 1 plus 0.04, compounded once a year for 5 years. So I get 10,000, 1.04 to the 5. And when I did that on my calculator, choice G became evident as my answer, $12,167 in the bank. Woohoo! 31. A right circular cylinder is shown in the figure below, with dimensions given in centimeters. What is the total surface area? Well, remember the cylinder is made up of these two circles, so 2 pi r squareds. It's also made up of this lateral area, which is that 2 pi r h that they tell me about. So I need to figure out the radius and the height of the cylinder. Well, the height's pretty easy. That's labeled in the picture. But they don't label the radius. They label the diameter as 20. So we have to notice that and say that the radius is 10. 2 pi times 10 squared plus 2 pi times 10 times 20. That gives me 100 times 2, or 200 pi. This gives me 200 times 2, or 400 pi, for a total of 600 pi square inches, and that's choice D, 600 pi. 32. Given that F is, we just had a worksheet with these problems. You should rock these. F is 4x plus 1, and G is x squared minus 2. Which of the following is the composition F of G of x? Well, that means I need to plug G of x inside the F function. So I'm going to take this and plug it in there. 4x squared minus 2 plus 1. So I get 4x squared minus 8 plus 1, or 4x squared minus 7. And that's choice H for number 32. 33. And believe it or not, this is the pace we're supposed to be going with these problems. 33 problems, 33 minutes. 33. Table below. Oh, this is an expected value problem, isn't it? Okay. 43 soccer matches. What is the average number of goals scored per match to the nearest 0.1 goal? All right, so I need to compute 4 matches with 0, and 1 match with 10, and 2 matches with 5, and 3 matches with 9, and 4 matches with 7, and 5 matches with 5, and there was 1 match with 6, and there were 2 matches with 7. Okay, so I add up all of those, and I got 120 divided by the 43 matches, and I get 2.8 is the closest number offered. So B is my answer for 33. So that was really just an average of adding up all the points from all the games, dividing by how many matches there were. 34. 34 says, which angles must be supplementary to x? And the only ones that are parallel are A and B. Okay, so since these are parallel, we know that these angles would all be the same. Just like we know that all these angles would be the same. And we know these angles would all be the same. And we know all these angles would be the same. So what do we notice here? It looks like 1 and 2 are the same, and 9 and 10 are the same. 5 and 6 are the same. Oh, all must be supplementary to x. 1 second. Here's x. So this is supplementary, this is supplementary, this is supplementary, this is supplementary. But these, while these may be equal and supplementary to these, this one isn't equal to that. If we had two sets of parallel lines, and this was our x, then I agree that this would, not only would this be supplementary, and this, but also this and this, this and this. We'd have a lot more supplementary if we had two pairs of parallel lines instead of just one pair of parallel lines. So my answer here is H. Only these four, 1, 2, 9, and 10, will be supplementary to this angle x. 35. 35 says 3x to the third raised to the third is equivalent to what? Well, I apply that exponent to both of these because there's no plus or minus sign in here. I get 3 to the third and x to the third raised to the third. 3 to the third is 27, and when I raise a power to a power, I multiply them. 3 times 3 is 9. 27x to the ninth, which is why E is my answer to 35. 36, and 60% of the way done. Which of the following is equivalent to the inequality 4x minus 8 is greater than 8x plus 16? Well, if I subtract 4x from both sides, and I subtract 16 from both sides, I get negative 24 is greater than 4x. And if I divide both sides by 4, I get x is less than negative 6. So my answer is choice F. 37. Oh, by the way, if you move the 8x over here, remember you're going to need to divide both sides by a negative, which means flipping the direction of your inequality. 37. As shown in the standard xy coordinate plane below, P lies on the circle with the center at 2, 3. Okay. So here's 2, 3, and here's the center, 6, the point on the circle. What are the coordinates of the image of P after it is rotated 90 degrees clockwise from the center? Well, if I take this and rotate it 90 degrees, it's now going to be over here. So I'm looking for something here. Well, I noticed that the y value would be negative, and there's only one choice with a negative y value, and that's C. C for 37. 38. What is the sine of m? Sine of m. We know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse, and the opposite is 2 root 11, and the hypotenuse is 12. So, I don't see my answer here. Well, if I use the Pythagorean theorem without simplifying and do 144 minus 100, I get 44 for that side over there. And so square root of 44, and this is 12. And so when I do opposite over adjacent, I have square root of 44 over 12, which corresponds with choice K. Unsimplified answer. 39. In the figure below, B lies on AC. BD bisects ABE. Okay, I'm going to start drawing this. BD bisects ABE. So I know that this is equal to this. And BE bisects CBD. So I know that this and this are equal. So I've got 3 equal angles here. That means 180 divided by 3 is 60 degrees. Each of these is 60. So what are we looking for? DBE, 60 degrees, and that's choice B for problem number 39. Okay, let's take a look at problem 40. Says there are 8 times 10 to the 12th hydrogen molecules in a volume of 4 times 10 to the 4th cubic centimeters. What's the average number of molecules per cubic centimeters? So they want molecules on top and they want cubic centimeters on the bottom. So 4 times 10 to the 4th goes on the bottom. 8 times 10 to the 12th on the top. These numbers I divide to get 2. And remember, when the bases are the same and we're dividing, bases are the same and dividing, we subtract the exponents. So I get 2 times 10 to the 8th, which is choice H for number 40. 41. Oh my goodness. Well, so this is the law of cosines. And if you don't know what the law of cosines is, you should skip this problem. I see that they give me the law of cosines. But am I able to figure it out? Let's see. Note for triangle ABC with side length A, opposite angle A. The length of B is opposite B. Yeah, so they tell me all the information I need to know. But I bet many of you will say, oh, too many words, and be overwhelmed. This is 30, and I'm looking for this. Now, they tell me that this angle here is 170 degrees. And they tell me that this angle here is 300 degrees. So 300 minus 170 tells me that this angle inside the triangle is 130 degrees. And now I have the information that I need to use the law of cosines. Remember, the law of cosines in parentheses up there says that c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c. Well, let's plug in what we know. A is 20, B is 30, and angle C is 130. So I'd have 20 squared plus 30 squared minus 2 times 20 times 30 times cosine 130. But that's c squared. I need c, so I have to take the square root of both sides. And when I look at my choices, I notice that B is my only option. 42. If you're in trig, we'll be doing law of cosines in chapter 6. What rational number is halfway in between 1/5 and 1/3? Well, you might be thinking that that number is 1/4, and you'd be wrong. Instead, we're looking for the number that's halfway in between. So we have to add these two numbers together, 1/3, and divide by 2. Now, in order to add these fractions together, I need to make a common denominator. Here I'll multiply by 3/3, and here I'll multiply by 5/5. So I end up with 8 over 15 divided by 2 over 1. 8 over 15 times 1 over 2, which gives me 4 over 15. 4 over 15 is my answer, and that's J. Okay, 43. An isosceles trapezoid, that means that AD and BC are equal to each other. With AB parallel to DC, BDC measures 25, and BCA measures 35. Well, one of the things I remember from geometry is that the base angles of an isosceles trapezoid are congruent. So this must be 25, this must be 35, and each of these base angles must be 60 degrees. Okay, what is the measure of DBC? DBC. Well, ICDBC is this triangle with 25 degrees and 60 degrees, so how many degrees are left over here? 180 minus 25 minus 60 gives me 180 minus 85, or 95 degrees. So B is my answer to 43. 44. In the figure below, the area of the larger square is 50, the area of the smaller square is 18. What is x? Okay, so the area here is 50, which means since it's a square, oh, I shouldn't use x. S and S. We know that s squared equals 50. If we take the square root, we get that the side length is square root of 50, or 5 root 2. We're told that this smaller square, we'll call its side length y, the smaller square has an area of 18. So y squared equals 18. And I'll take the square root of both sides and get y equals 3 root 2. So this is 3 root 2, but this whole side length is 5 root 2. And they're asking me for this amount here, which is the difference between 5 root 2 and 3 root 2. So if I subtract 3 root 2 from 5 root 2, I get 2 root 2 as my answer, and that's choice G for number 44. 45. Which of the following is a rational number? Well, remember, a rational number isn't a number that goes on forever. A rational number is something that can be written as a ratio of integers. Square root of 2 is irrational, pi is irrational, so the square root of pi is irrational, square root of 7 is irrational. You might think 5 over 25 is rational, but when I simplify, I get this, and that's not rational. Let's take a look at choice E. We had the square root of 64 over the square root of 49, which is 8 over 7. Why, look, an integer over an integer. So because we've got a ratio of integers with square root of 64 over 49, we know that choice E is our answer. 46. If A is less than B, A is less than B, then the absolute value of A minus B. So let's think of an example here, like 2 minus 3. Well, 2 minus 3 is negative 1, and the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. Which of the following must be true? Okay, so I'm going to use these values for A and B and see what happens. And when I look at my choices are A plus B would be equivalent? Well, we know the answer should be 1, but if I add 2 plus 3, I get 5. That's not equivalent. How about negative 2 plus 3? No, that's negative 5. So choice G doesn't work. Square root of 2 minus 3? No, that's the square root of negative 1. That doesn't work. How about 2 minus 3? No, that's negative 1. We need positive 1. So by process of elimination, or you can check it out yourself, K will be our answer to 46. 46 is K. 47. Tom has taken 5 of 8 equally weighted tests in his history class. The average is 78 points. How many points does he need to earn on his 6th test to bring his average score up to 80? Well, he's taken 5 tests, and his average has been 78. So that's 390 points so far. And if he wanted to average 80 points on 6 tests, 6 times 80 is 480. So 480 is the number of total points he'd need on the 6 tests. If we subtract how many points he's got on the 5 tests, we see he needs a 90 on the 6th test in order to get an average of 80. Notice his average will only go up 2% by scoring 12 points higher on this test than his average. Okay, 48. In the complex number line, the horizontal axis is called the real axis and the vertical axis is the imaginary. Complex number a plus bi graphed in the complex number plane is comparable to point AB graphed in the standard xy plane. The modulus of a complex number is given by the square root. Oh, a plus bi equals square root of, or the modulus of that number is square root of a squared plus b squared. Okay, which of them has the greatest modulus? Well, this is the Pythagorean theorem. And so in which situation would the Pythagorean theorem give us the greatest result? Well, when that distance from the origin was greatest. And so it looks to me, when I look at this picture, that the distance from origin to 2, now that's pretty short, and 4, now that's short, that the longest distance goes out to z5. Oh, no, it doesn't. It goes way out here. My bad. I didn't see it under my scribbling. So F is our answer for this one. We're looking for the one with the longest distance. We didn't really have to know what modulus was. We just had to persevere in reading the question and understand that we were looking at the Pythagorean theorem. 49. Real numbers 8 to the 2x plus 1 equals 4 to the 1 minus x. I remember doing a problem like this with Riley a few months ago, and I told her to rewrite the base on both sides so that they were the same. 8 is 2 to the thirds. And 4 is 2 squared. When I raise a power to a power, I need to multiply them. Don't forget to distribute the 3 not only to the 2x, but also to the 1. So you would end up with 6x plus 3. And over here, 2, raise a power to a power I multiply. Don't forget to distribute the 2 to each of these. 2 minus 2x. Now, if you've been through logs, you could take the log base 2 of both sides. Or you could use the one-to-one property and say if the bases are the same and the terms are equal, then these exponents must be the same. So 6x plus 3 must equal 2 minus 2x. If I add 2x to both sides and subtract 3 from both sides, I get 8x is negative 1, or x equals negative 1/8. And that's choice C. Can we fit 50 here? 50. Because this asks us about this function, and the choices are, well, it's not the inverse of cotangent, nor is it undefined pi. They're really just asking us about even and odd functions here. And we remember that even functions have y-axis symmetry and that odd functions have origin symmetry. This graph has y-axis symmetry, so F is my answer to number 50. Okay, 51. An integer from 100 to 99 inclusive is chosen at random. What is the probability that the number chosen will have a 0 in the ones digit? Okay, a 0 in in at least one digit. Well, so if I start off with these numbers, 200, 300, and so on until I get to 900, because 999 doesn't end in 0. These numbers, there are 9 of them. Okay? And what about numbers like 101, 102, 103, 104, and so on, all the way up to 109? Well, that's 9 numbers. And how many times can that happen? Well, it can happen at 200 and 300 and 400 and 500 and 600. And so that's going to be able to happen 9 times. So that's going to be 81. Plus, what else do I have here? Oh, right. 110, 120, 130, 140, and so on to 190. There's 9 of those, and how often could this occur? Well, it could occur at 100 and 200 and 300, and so that's another 9 of those. So I've got 81 things like this, and I've got 81 things like this, and I've got 9 things like this. That's a total of 171 different things over 900. Woof. Okay. That was fun. No, it wasn't. You might want to skip that problem. 52. In the figure, the line Q in standard xy coordinate plane is negative 2x plus y equals 1. And the line R, which is distinct from Q, that means they're not the same line. I know, you look at them and you say, how could they be the same? The angles formed are congruent. What's the slope? Okay. So this one and this one. So if I put this in slope-intercept form, I get y equals 2x plus 1. So I know the slope here is 2. Well, if this angle and this angle are the same, that means their tangent values are the same. Which means if this is a slope of positive 2, then here I'm looking at a slope of negative 2. And that's why choice F is my answer for 52. 53. Triangle below, we're looking for the cosine of tangent inverse of A over B. Okay, so when I think about tangent A over B and find the missing side using Pythagorean theorem, and now say, what's the cosine of that angle? We know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we would have b over square root of a squared plus b squared. And that's choice D for number 53. So glad the trig students did that problem in section 4.7 in the last chapter. 54. We've got a circle whose radius is 52. 52. Which of the following is closest in area in square miles covered by the radio signal? Well, it's the area of a circle whose radius is 52. So A equals pi r squared is the formula I use. When I did it on my calculator, I got 8494.866, and so choice J is the closest I have. Which of the following is the equation of the circle? Well, remember, for number 55, the equation of the circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Our center is at the origin, so x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared, and our radius is 52. Don't forget the squared. And so that's choice E for number 55. Can I fit 56 here? Well, let's see. It says that radio station WGGW and another radio station WGWB are on the same highway 100 miles apart. So WGGW and over here WGWB. This distance is 100 miles. The radio signal from this one goes 60 miles. And we know the radio station for this one, its transmitter goes 52 miles. So what can we say about this overlap? Well, think about it this way. If we went 60 miles from this side, and this total distance was 100, then this piece over here would be 40. This one has a distance of 52. Here's 40 plus 12 more. There's 12 miles of overlap. So choice G is my answer to number 56. 56 is choice G. Okay, last 4 problems. Let's see if we can get them all on one board. 57. The graphs y equals x minus 1, y equals x minus 1 to the 4th. Solve the inequality. So I'm wondering when x minus 1 to the 4th is smaller than x minus 1 to the 1st. Well, I like dividing both sides by x minus 1. X minus 1 divided by x minus 1 is 1. X minus 1 to the 4th divided by x minus 1 to the 1st is x minus 1 to the 3rd. If I take the cube root of both sides, I get x minus 1 is less than 1. And if I add 1 to both sides, I get x minus 1, or x is less than 2. Okay, but what else do I know? Well, I see from the graph that they intersect at 1. So that point is 1, that point is 2, and so between 1 and 2, x minus 1 to the 4th is below x minus 1. And that's choice E for 57. 58. For every 2-digit number, x, and every tens digit, t, and units digit, u, let y be a 2-digit number formed by reversing the digits of x. Okay, so originally the digits of x, the tens is t, and the ones is u. And if I switch, if I reverse those digits, I'll have u, t. U is the tens, t is the ones. Okay, which of the following is the equivalent of x minus y? So this is x, 10 times this plus this. And y is 10 times this plus that. And we want to know what x minus y is. Well, that's 10t plus u minus 10u plus t. Don't forget to distribute that negative. I'll have 10t plus u minus 10u minus t, or 9t minus 9u, u. 9t minus 9u I don't see, but if I factor a 9 out of each of these, I see my answer is choice F. Choice F for number 58. 59. What is the area of triangle ABC? Okay, so I notice this triangle has a point here at 5, 3, and a point here at 1, 3. So I know that this distance is the distance between these x values, or 4. Now this point is located up here at 4, 5. And the height of the triangle is the difference between this y value and this y value. 5 minus 3 is 2. So the area of the triangle is 1/2 base times height, or 1/2 4 times 2, which is 4. So 4 is my answer, and that's why A is my choice for 59. 60. The sum of an infinite geometric sequence is given by A over 1 minus R, where A is the common ratio. Oh no, R is the common ratio, and A is the value of the first term. It helps to read. The sum is 200. A I don't know. 1 minus 0.15 is how I start this problem. Okay, so that's 200 equals A sub 1 over 0.85. If I multiply both sides by 0.85, I get A sub 1 equals 85 over 100 times 200, or 170. Okay, and so what's A sub 2? Well, remember, in a geometric sequence, A sub 3 divided by A sub 2 is our R value. I could also do A sub 4 divided by A sub 3, but the one we need is A sub 2 over A sub 1. Our common ratio is A sub 2 over A sub 1. So if I take that common ratio of 0.15 and set it equal to A sub 2 over 170, and then multiply both sides by 170, I'll end up with the value of A sub 2, which is 3 over 20 times 170. We can take off some zeros. 51 over 2, which is 25.5. And that's choice F. Choice F for number 60. And it took us an hour and 7 minutes, so we went too slow. Too slow, I say. All right, go faster. I hope this was useful. I hope you learned, or at least reviewed, some of the math you learned, and that it helps you when you take the ACT in the beginning of April. Take care, everyone.